Call the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, April 21st, here at 6 p.m., calling it to order. First order of business will be the invocation. Mr. Chris, would you lead off on that first?
Pray with me if you'd like to. Well, dearest Father, thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us. Thank you for our lives that you've given us and sustaining those lives. Help us to remember we really can do nothing independent of you. We need you for all things. And we certainly need you as we plan our course so that we could adopt your vision and follow your guidance. So I pray that would be the plan tonight, really, that this would be your meeting, that you would set the stage, you would lead us and direct us, and help staff to help the commission make good decisions. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. I'll lead off. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice to see that we still do that in our meetings. All right. We have a approval of the minutes from April 7th. I hear a motion for those approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mhm.
There was a petition submitted in the back of material. Is that a good time to discuss this now? Looks like you want this to be removed.
This is about the minutes from last time.
So this is
There
not
was, I
talking
didn't see a
about-
petition in the last.
But it was in the backup. Is this the time to discuss that now?
No, that'd be a good time later. When we get to to this part. Right now, we're discussing last week. And we're approving the minutes from the last meeting as to accuracy and update and things like that. I'm assuming there was not a petition last meeting, is that correct? No. Okay. So all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed?
Wasn't I?
Okay. All right. Commission member comments. I want to start off, and then I'll let everybody else jump in here. Yes, sir.
Public comment for non-agenda
Oh,
items.
thank you. I was jumping on into the meat of the evening. I did not see any here. That's why I skipped it. Actually, not really. Commission member comment. Off here real quick. I saw a Facebook post about this being an emergency meeting. And I thought it was funny because it was a great example of not everything you read on Facebook is real. I saw the same emergency meeting notice at the gas station, and so the public confusion seems to be rampant. Hopefully we'll be able to clarify some of that. But for anyone that has followed the Planning Commission meetings over the years knows that for the past 6 years, I think, the Planning Commission has had 2 meetings per month, pretty much every month. This year, however, we were hopeful of having a lighter workload. So we voted to reduce those meetings to once a month with the understanding that we could add those meetings back should we need to have time to fully cover a subject. Clearly by the crowd, we've made the right decision. That's all I have. Yes, ma'am.
I have comments, going to the last meeting, it was regarding the slides, and I think it's really good news because the slides were presented as real-world examples of problems, and I'm here to tell you there's no problem, so I think that's good news. If we could look at a few, I could give James some TMS numbers, we'd go through that. Okay?
I'd rather not use TMS numbers because we've talked about that these were examples of the way people subdivide their property and not specific properties.
It's the only way to locate these properties, it's public information.
Again,
It's online.
Mr. Root had mentioned originally that we were not to put TMS numbers out there because,
How can I
again,
show
it
you
was.
these pictures? Okay,
If
then
I could,
slides.
Mr. Chairman, this is a point of order. What we've tried to do is when we've had documents that just the public unwittingly may have a tax member or tax map number or an address or a phone number associated with it, we use it. We don't just want to publish it to everybody so everybody knows everybody's business. Certainly you can find it online if you're looking for that particular property, but we have redacted TMS numbers so people don't know, hey, Planning Commission's talking about my property, why is that? But in this case, I'm assuming you could probably maybe write them down for James, and James could pull up the parcel and without showing the
Here's a
TMS
slide. We
number.
call it slide number 1, slide number 2.
just use the slide.
Okay.
Presented
All
on,
right.
okay? Slide number one.
Are all our monitors off?
No, just yours.
Just mine.
We didn't want you
The
to.
power should be on the bottom right side.
Perfect.
You get it?
Yep.
Okay. Is that it?
This property was pointed out as having an issue with access to the road, only a 23-foot access point. The property in front of it on the left is the same thing. You flick it, I mean, how do you do this?
Not sure. So,
Why don't you describe what your intent is?
My intent is to show that every picture shown at our last meeting showed property that didn't have a problem with access because it owned adjacent property next to it. It was just not pointed out that the same owner owned 2 or 3 parcels in a row.
Right.
So instead of having 23 feet, it in fact had a ton.
But that wasn't the subject of the day.
The subject of the day was access to the road because of pinch points or narrow access here.
Okay?
So I'm just saying, the same owner owns that parcel of land, so there is no issue with access to that road,
Don't disagree.
okay? Well, it was presented as a real-world problem, a real-world example of access problem, so I'm saying not so fast.
I would disagree with that.
Let me finish. The third slide,
Well, before we get too far ahead, is this a discussion or is this just?
these are my
I think she's heard
Oh, her
comments
comments, okay,
under
never mind.
Commissioner comments, so we can let her make,
Yeah.
so she should be able to make comments.
This one, yeah, so this one, well, help me out on this one had the driveway, but he got land, he got 4 feet on either side from his neighbors,
that's this.
and he's converted part of his, and I drove down there, he's converted part of his land to an RV park. So he accommodated the 50 feet by just going 4 feet on either side of that access point to make 50. Okay, the fourth one?
Not sure which one it is.
Yeah. That wasn't part of it, I guess it was this one. So, same one, so she's done it in red. So this property owner owns additional property outlined in red to achieve a more than a 50-foot access point if he needs to. Okay, the next one. This would be slide number 6, I think. This one. This presentation is count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep. Yeah, so this would be that one.
So this property, the same property owner owns the parcel on the left in front of it and the one on the right behind it. Plenty of land to achieve a necessary access of 50 feet or more. Next. This parcel, there's 5 parcels in a row and all owned by the same group. So again, a skinny little access point here is not an issue because they own so much land on either side of that flagpole. Next. Same thing with this one came with a deed of 50-foot right-of-way, number 1 and the land number 2 and triangle in front of that are also part of the same owner. And it's already deeded with a 50-foot right-of-way, so that's not a problem either. Next. This one with that little pinch point, the property owner owns land on the left and the right of that to give it ample road frontage to achieve. She owns 4 properties all in a row there to achieve the necessary access point. Next. This one is a really large parcel on West Oak. I shouldn't have said that, but anyway, again, parcels all around that access point to achieve the necessary 50-foot right-of-way. And the last one would be the 4 pictures. This one was already discussed in slide number, the one on the top left here is part of number 6. This one in red is also, on either side of the skinny flagpole, left and right, same property owner owns the land. The one on the right corner is up in Tomasi, and he also owns the land to the right corner, giving him necessary access if he needs it. So I think that's good news. I think these were presented as problems, when in fact I found them not to be problems. We were challenged last meeting by a member of the audience, do your own research. They did, and I was really happy with that. Secondly, I want to mention, I went and Mr. Nix, I think it was, mentioned what does Pickens do? What does Spartanburg do about these 50-foot right-of-ways and whatnot? And so I looked it up, and Pickens private road shall be 50-foot right-of-way. And the right-of-way shall be associated with plat not just owned, maintained, or supervised by Pickens constructed pursuant to any plan, which is the same language as pretty much our 26-2. Spartanburg, and its private road, is a little bit different. It has a 40-foot right-of-way, but it limits 8 lots. And you can go down to a 16-foot wide driving surface. But again, it's limiting it at 8. And again, the right-of-way easement shown shall be private, not owned, maintained, or supervised by Spartanburg County. And then the other one. What am I missing? Anderson. I have Anderson in there. Well, I'm missing Anderson. I had Anderson, I could find it in my papers, but it was the same 50-foot right-of-way, which pretty much mirrored. Oh,
Are you through?
yeah.
I want to say something real quick to that, and then I think you were going to speak after that. I'm very glad you brought that up, because it really shows the difficulty in what we're trying to talk about. And unfortunately, none of what was just said has anything to do with actually what we're trying to apply. And so let me explain that. In South Carolina, you cannot have landlocked property. There's safeguards against having landlocked property. That if you go to do so, first step is that James is going to go, hey, how are you going to get access to that property? You've landlocked yourself if we create this subdivision. Second thing you can do is you can go to the courts, and the courts will give you that prescriptive easement to keep that from happening. These examples here are not examples of the real world or real life, and I apologize if that came across that way. But since the very beginning of this in 2022, we have said that this is how owners cut up their properties. And these are examples how those owners cut up their properties. That landlocked property, there's a safeguard. But people can very easily survey off and cut up their properties in ways that they unknowingly hinder themselves from future opportunity. There's no safeguards. There's no court system that allows them to go to a judge to get a prescriptive easement across that. So unfortunately, back in 2022, I had asked for a whiteboard or an overhead projector that we could simply draw out lines of examples. That was not available here, still not available as far as whiteboards or overheads. So these are examples of how people cut up their property. And that James has no obligation to say, hey, oh, by the way, you may want to check these ordinances to see if you're in conflict with them. So. Did anybody else have?
Yes. So, ASU, I think the gist of your conversation was they own the land next to them, so they should be able to get additional right-of-way from that property. The problem is, if the land is mortgaged, they're not going to be able to subdivide that land again without satisfying that mortgage. The other problem is if they subdivided this land and it's in a trust, I don't know who owns the land. You just can't say because this land's subdivided and the same owner has the land next to it, that you can get the right of way. That's a very broad statement. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You don't know who owns that land, or is it mortgaged out? Is the other land mortgaged out? You don't know that. So saying that is one problem I see. The other thing is where we're saying, well, okay, it's right there at 50-foot right of way. Well, if anybody goes back to geometry, if you're measuring the hypotenuse of the angle and not the leg, then that 50 foot is not the true width of the road. A lot of these are not perpendicular to the road. And right here, this picture here, the one in red, James, can you blow that up? See how it gets narrow towards the opening? So if this property was sold off to someone, like many properties in Oconee County has, they assume they have right of way. But right there could stop some of their dreams for that property. James, scroll down. I mean, you're my opposite of my thing.
You're up, my down.
Yeah. You know, this is another good example of subdivided land where if it gets sold, you're going to run into the same situation of not being able to have full use of that property. Keep scrolling back towards the beginning. Keep going. We've already talked about that one. So this road right here is a good example of how it, what did we say the access was, 25 foot? Is that, who wrote up these slides?
This one is Mike's, there was another one that.
Mike, is that 25 foot?
As far as the access, that slide got cut off in emailing, and I honestly don't know.
Okay. But anyway, you were
But it
saying.
does show that there are multiple, the thought was that there are multiple properties on here, and we have numbers that dictate how many homes can go within a small section
Right,
type of road like that.
without increasing the width. Because right now that's considered a private drive, right?
Correct. Well,
Okay.
Again, these were examples of how people cut up property.
Scroll. So this is a good example of, I think it was brought up that they measured from the pins at the bottom of the road. If you notice, that's not perpendicular to that road. So your road is actually going to be narrower as far as the width. And the other thing you're not taking into consideration, if you look at the lines, this must have been a hayfield, and it shows you the elevation changes and all that. It's not so bad down in the lower part of the county, but as you get up in the upper part of the county, the roads that may have the bare minimum, you still will not be able to put a road in because the elevation changes. So it's, with that 50-foot right-of-way, you'll have to end up rethinking. And what we're trying to do is really offer the landowners the ability to say, hey, you know, I should only be required what is needed for emergency response and drainage. But these are good examples of how land gets subdivided and sold off, and the owner, unknowing to them, ends up into a situation where they're very limited on what they can do with that property. That's all I have.
I'm trying to remember geometry and hypotenuse. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, the leg is always shorter than the hypotenuse.
So if you have a 50-foot, if you have a road and 50 feet on the road and a survey measures 50 feet on the road, these are parallel lines. These are going to be less than 50 feet
On right angles.
on right angles. Man. What other comments, staff comments,
We got commission first.
member comments?
Commissioners and then,
Yep. Are there any other commission member comments? No? James, welcome back.
thanks.
I realize you didn't attend the last meeting. I hopefully you watched it.
I did, yeah, I was watching it in the
It's
car
a-
when we were coming back, so.
It's a big subject. Before we really jump into the topic tonight, I do want to discuss a couple of things. There were several things that were said, and I appreciate Ms. Morgan providing her documents as historic documents there for us. But in that meeting, Arrowhead Point subdivision was mentioned. And we were talking about requirements of private roads and private drives and removing the right-of-way on private roads and private drives. And Ms. Morgan had said in that, describing Arrowhead Point, that if this proposal goes through and private road standards are relaxed, that project could automatically get the green light. If we voted to remove the right-of-way requirements on B2 and C2, does that have any approval or non-approval aspect of Arrowhead Point as it relates to right-of-way?
And so, if I could, Mr. Chairman, Arrowhead Point is still in litigation, it's still subject to an appeal, so we haven't had a final order yet. It's been appealed and reviewed, so I don't want to comment on the procedural posture of that case.
Okay.
I will say the variance was granted, so that action by the BZA was done. Whether some change that the planning commission would recommend, this is not a legislative body, so just as a tee-up, anything they do is going to go to county council. They'll have to have 3 readings and a public hearing on it. So this is the planning advisory commission. So it wouldn't have an effect on the variance granted, but if, say, county council eventually, before that case is decided, did away with the 50-foot right-of-way requirement on private roads, that could render moot the case, potentially, if it's not resolved by then. Now, it's on the last potential appeal, which I believe is for the Supreme Court to decide if they want to review it, so, but I don't want to speak to it anymore.
So you say it would be a Supreme Court appeal if that were the case, so.
At this juncture, it would be, yeah, it's
So,
a
from
request.
the BZA, it would go to circuit court, and circuit court judge sided with the BZA that their decision was correct or approved, or how does that work?
Right, the procedural posture was, BZA made its decision, it was appealed to the circuit court, so usually that's, trial court, but from BZA, they sit in an appellate capacity. The circuit court sided on the BZA's, with the county, said it granted the variance correctly. That was appealed to the Court of Appeals.
Is that in Columbia?
Correct.
Okay.
It sits in Columbia, they can travel around, but that's where it's based. The Court of Appeals and its panel sided with the circuit court and upheld that decision. A petition for rehearing, asking the Court of Appeals to, hey, will you reconsider this? It's a normal procedural move to do. Was filed, that was denied. So at this juncture, I think there's a gap of time. I don't know how many days. I'm not the litigation counsel on it. I want to say in my mind 25 days, 20 days. They should have a right to petition the Supreme Court for a writ of certiorari. I mean, hey, will you review this court? Supreme Court doesn't have to. They can decide for any number of reasons to or not to. So all that is to say that case is not completely closed yet. It could have some bearing, but not on the variance granted, if that's your question. That was done. It would be on.
Right, well, it said if this proposal goes through and the standards are relaxed, that the project could get automatically green lighted. And the project automatically getting green lighted, I'm understanding that project still has to go through roads stuff and plat approvals and things like that. But with regard to the right-of-way,
The road review hasn't happened because of the process that's going through, so that is still.
but with regard to the right-of-way, it's the BZA gave a variance, the circuit court, appellate court, and then the third judge said that they denied the hearing. Is that what you were
The
saying?
Court of Appeals, so pretty much with any court, you lose. You're going to file a motion to reconsider if you lose. So you lose, with that same court, you make a re-argument, say, will you reconsider your decision? So that was made with the Court of Appeals. So that was made and denied. We're not going to reconsider our opinion. So now, appellant, you can try with the Supreme Court. I don't think that notice of appeal has been filed or request for a writ of cert has been filed yet. I'm not sure. So that's where that stands. That's
Does
why I
the
say it's
Supreme
not a
Court
final
look at the past stuff, or do they bring new evidence and things like that?
Generally, they would not bring new evidence. They're just going to look for.
Just based on the details. And so far, that particular subdivision has been 3 years with regard to the right-of-way issue.
I think it's 22.
In appeals?
my mind.
So it's kind of drug along. I'm hoping that we can nail down some stuff for the future, because we've been waiting a long time to try to correct some of the problems here, if that's what decides need to be corrected.
I heard the word, this could be mute, make mute, is something, if we decide something tonight, could it affect the case?
No, nothing that y'all could do would
Pardon?
affect, nothing, that's what I led off with, that you're not a legislative body. You could send your advice to council. Council could go through the 3 reading process, public hearing, and ordain something that changed this, that say, hey, no right-of-way is required for private drives. That could ostensibly have an effect of making that appeal moot. So, hey, you don't need it anymore. So that is still, like 95% of it's, foreclosed, I guess, if you want to put a percentage on it. But there is still, all appeals have not been exhausted, is the best way to put it. So we still
But
have.
potentially, council could influence the
Hello,
case
sir.
in court somehow.
No, they're not gonna influence the court. You just gotta think, the underlying law was a petition for a variance from the 50-foot requirement. So, if that 50-foot requirement is done away with, then for everybody and anybody, they can proceed without that requirement. So that would apply across the board. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mr. Root, is that a private road or a public road?
No, that's a public road.
That's a
This
public-
has to be abandoned, yeah.
So you'd have to abandon the public road.
It still has work to do, just as
It'd have
Mr.
to go
Johnson
through the
put
court
up.
to be abandoned. And then, it could turn into a private.
Correct.
But right now, it's a public road.
And to be fair, that was one of the issues that was very much litigated in that case. Again, and this is a term that is going to be thrown around a lot. So the county will get its rights to maintain a road either by an easement, a written document. You may have given one of those to the county before and said, all right, public can travel on this road, you maintain it for us, that's great. Most of the roads in the county are gotten by prescriptive easement, which is, at some point in time, the county started maintaining that roadway. And so over the course of 20 years, the county's still maintaining it. The county then is, hey, this is a public road and you have to keep maintaining it. It doesn't have 50 foot, it doesn't have 80 foot, it just has what it's maintained. So it's essentially ditch to ditch. So when you hear prescriptive easement, that's what that's talking about. It's not a document, it just happens by operation of law.
All right, so not to beat a dead horse, but I just want to make sure I fully understand, and that, because there again, a lot of confusion. At 25 minutes and 48 seconds into the YouTube video, Ms. Morgan said that if this proposal goes through, the private road standards are relaxed, this project, speaking of Arrowhead Point, could automatically get the green light. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could too, and I definitely don't want to monopolize the meeting, but since we have a new group and a lot of new faces, and probably the most people we've had at a planning commission meeting, thank y'all for coming out. Council, we always read this at the beginning, it's just good to be mindful of. A prohibited act in this limited public forum includes uttering any loud, obscene, profane, threatening, disruptive, or abusive language, or engaging in any disorderly or disruptive conduct that impedes, disrupts, or disturbs the orderly proceedings of any meeting or the operations of any department. So that's just something to keep in mind. We try to keep it so if someone has the floor, they say their piece, and then someone else has the floor, and that's why there's no back and forth during public comments, and if y'all cannot yell at them when they're speaking, hopefully they won't yell back at y'all when they're speaking, it'll be a good meeting, a shorter meeting.
James, I'm sorry to not let you talk yet, but I do have one more question. At 26 minutes and 2 seconds in, and Ms. Morgan had made a lot of her comments, which again, I appreciate you putting on public record, had made a lot of those comments directed towards me, and I just want to make sure that there's no confusion in the audience. She said that through a FOIA request that she had obtained, showing back in 2019 that Mr. Johnson submitted a subdivision development request for 3 to 4 tiny homes, and that the planning commissioner at the time responded, only 3 homes allowed with a 50-foot right-of-way. Now, in 2019, I did send over over plans to build 3 or 4 cottages for my grandkids over the next 15 years, and fortunately, my daughter only had 3 kids, so it's kind of a moot point, but Ms. Morgan suggested that I was denied the request due to a need for a right-of-way. What Ms. Morgan didn't say is that I have a 50-foot right-of-way all the way to my property. In fact, she knows that because Jimmy shares that same right-of-way with me, that 50-foot right-of-way. But James, just so that the whole issue is clear and hopefully put an end to false comments. The Planning Commission had approved my request, but can you confirm anything about that? My request is that I have a 50-foot right-of-way to my property and through my property, but I did not want to cut down the trees required of our county ordinance until I decided if I was going to build the fourth home.
So the 2019 application was voided. That application was never approved. There was a separate application due in '21 that was approved for those cottages using driveway off the end of the private road that you were approved for the 4 cottages.
Sounds great. Appreciate that. And if you want to go on and finish up with any other comments that you may have as staff.
That's it.
Excellent. All right, we've gone through commissioner member comments. We've gone through planning staff comments. So now to the part of the subject that everybody came for. Wonderful. Oftentimes people say, in a lot of the new faces, we want to thank you all for being here. And before we get into a topic, a lot of times I'd like to describe what that topic is about. So we're going to do that real quick, and we'll get into the discussion. Oftentimes people say things at a podium that are not factual or accurate, and while these comments are often acknowledged with emotional support, that's not how we govern, or at least not how we're supposed to govern. Over the past 18 months, this commission has taken on numerous steps to fix ongoing problems and community concerns. We pushed through changes to reduce the density in neighborhoods and tried to slow these high-density mass-style developments. We've created ordinances regarding descriptions of what constitutes the buildable area of a lot or on an unusual shaped lot. Tonight, I'm hopeful we can continue to correct some of the discrepancies and conflicts and overreach within our development standards. We've got a good crowd, so y'all are going to be real informed by the time this thing is over. A few years ago, we had an issue about sidewalks. Developers building student housing wanted to build sidewalks so that kids could walk to the bus stop and ride the bus to campus. I and some others thought it was a great idea to lighten the traffic count by having students take the bus instead of everybody driving their car. However, our ordinance said no sidewalks within the county right-of-ways that we're actually discussing. To ease the solution at the time, we could have reduced the right-of-way requirement on private property so that sidewalks could be built near the road. Unfortunately, a few citizens tainted the water by causing the county to create a much more cumbersome ordinance about sidewalks. I mean, have y'all never wondered why that cat bus doesn't stop at a bus stop, that they just kind of stop randomly on the road? We met with the planning commissioners, met with CAT, and they said it wasn't possible to build designated bus stops because a designated stop point would require a sidewalk to access, I guess safety or liability or whatever. Anyway, our county prevented sidewalks in the right-of-ways. It's still a cumbersome ordinance. We've kind of fixed that. Had we done what we're talking about now, we could have seen a lot more sidewalks like we used to. But those are the kind of things that we're discussing. Those are the big issues that we're actually talking about and not some of this other little petty stuff. One other example that we're dealing with and have last time and tonight. The definition in the Roads and Bridges, chapter 26, and the development standards in chapter 32 have conflict. In chapter 26(2)(b)(1), it describes private drives, saying they will serve no more than 10 lots or dwellings. But you go over to development standards in 32, and it says those private roads, private drives definitely defined as not less than 4 and not more than 10 single-family residential lots. So one definition in one ordinance says lots, one says dwellings. Why is this important? If you go to the definition of dwellings, it's 32:212 for anybody that wants to look it up. A dwelling means a building or a portion of a building arranged and or designed to provide living quarters for one or more families where each dwelling is provided with separate kitchen and bath facilities. Put in simple terms, if you have a house that has a basement, and there's a separate entrance and a kitchenette and a bathroom, you potentially have, depending on the lockable door, a second dwelling on the one lot. So hopefully people can see the conflict. Here's another example. If you have an owner with 5 acres of land and he has a home on the basement like I described with living quarters downstairs, he finishes a garage apartment, and now you have 3 dwellings on one lot. So go to, at the same time, an example of a developer who builds a small development of 10 lots. 3 owners build their home with a mother-in-law suite and an apartment. Well, now instantly you have 9 dwellings. What are the remaining 7 lots going to be able to do as far as building? So there's a clear conflict of definition. Dwellings clearly doesn't mean the same thing as lots, and we're trying to clear that stuff up. That's part of what we were discussing, part of what we've been discussing for a long time. The big problem, and I highlighted this, the problem is we went through a whole big deal last year on the development of Highway 130. Everybody up in arms about it. The problem is these big developers have got the legal funds to exploit conflicts in ordinances. I'm sure you'll have seen the stuff going on in Clemson. They're able to take an ordinance conflict and say, you're doing one thing to one group of people and another thing to another group of people, and we're going to exploit that. So we are hoping to clean up the definition conflicts and deal with some of these right-of-way issues. So with that said, we've got public comments. I think we've got comments here, but James, you had mentioned that there are other comments as well.
So there were 11 public comments that were emailed in today and over the weekend. We can either group the backup or we can read them all into the record, kind of up to you guys.
Are they long?
They are.
Long, how do you define long?
They're over, out of page or somewhere less, but they're some of their page or more.
More long-winded than me.
Well,
I think if
We
the
can-
citizen took the time to write a comment, we should hear it. That's my opinion.
What's the opinion here? Is there any other opinion?
Well, I think my motion would be to allow the individuals that showed up today to have their say first.
Okay.
And if there's enough time left over.
Does anybody have any opposition to that?
Well, this would fall under staff comments if James wants to know.
Actually, staff comments were over quite some time ago.
Oh, they are? Didn't find that. Sorry.
We'll get you up to speed.
I agree with Chairman, I agree with Mickey that people that went to the trouble to show up should speak first.
Okay.
And if it's your decision to read the letters, I'm fine with that too afterwards.
All right, we are going to have public comments. Everybody knows how this works. We have 4 minutes. I hold this up with a minute left, and I hold this up the time's up. We'd appreciate, since there are quite a few, everybody respecting that. And we will start it off with Mr. Tom Markovich. Please also state your name when you do this, just for the records.
Yes, sir, just in case y'all don't know. I am Tom Markovich, representing myself. I speak against the regulation for having private roads have the same standards as a public road. It's real simple. Private property is private, period. And the road standards, there shouldn't be one, to be honest. I went back and double checked. I wanted to reread a lot of statute, which y'all know I do. And I went to some of the Attorney General's opinions. And I like going to the Attorney General because they do their research. They make sure they back up all their information with the case law. And so sometimes it's just easier to go to the Attorney General than it is to dig through the case law. But when I go to statute and I look at the powers of Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals and what the requirements are for putting in place certain ordinances for public property. It always mentions the fact that all of the powers within the Board of Zoning Appeals, within the Planning Commission, have to suit a public purpose. I, for the life of me, cannot find a single public purpose for requiring the same standard to apply to a private road as it would a public road. There is none. It is private property, period. It'd be the same as somebody going and council deciding, oh, we're going to start regulating your bank account. We want you to put your money into certain types of investments that we think are going to be safe. They can't do it. It's private. Private property is private, period. And there are a lot of other things in this, in the roads ordinance and in the other ordinances that tie to it, 32, that need to be fixed. There's no question about it. And, but the simplest fix initially is just to do away with the requirement for private roads, period. Because private property is purely private, and that's it. There is no public purpose for requiring it to meet a public standard. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Miss Shannon DeRitter.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chairman. My name is Sharon DeRitter, District 1. I'm opposed to changing the right-of-way, and the reasons being, I live on a private street with 8 dwellings, with the current 15-foot right-of-ways and both sides of the 20-foot street, because Spectrum Fiber just recently came through our subdivision and added it. So we do not know in the next 10, 20 years what else, other utilities we might need. If the county approves changing the right-of-way for 11 or more dwellings on a private road, you can bet I will buy or the land that's closest to the first where the utility connections are. So also something to ponder is if the Planning Commission and the County Council wants to change the right-of-ways for streets for 11 dwellings or more, could be hundreds, what are they going to do for streets and private drives for 3 to 11? I don't know if they'll change that. Here's an example. You buy a lot on a street, which you think is a great idea because you have less traffic and noise. I buy the first lot on the private road at the very beginning where the utilities are. Water, sewer, phone, fiber, gas, and electricity. Now, most of these utilities you can do yourself on your property. Install solar panels for electricity, install a drain field and septic tank, use a cell phone instead of landline, use satellite and internet, and dig a well for water. Now, natural gas, sidewalks and street lights, and I don't know about the sidewalks now, but responsibility will be on your own, or you don't have any of those because the easements are not there. So you bought that land, and your realtor says you have options. You have utilities options, and your buyer and your builder says, we have a problem here. And you go, what? So you ask the permission to the dig across someone's property, your next door neighbors, and they say, yeah, no. Well, you know what, it's gonna cost you. Then you go to the next neighbor because you're at the end of the street and I'm at the top of the street, and you go to that neighbor and say, hey, can I have a permission to cut across your land? Can I dig it? Might be overhead power poles, I don't know. And they say no or yes. Oh, wait, it's gonna cost you. Do you see where I'm going with this? Until you come up to mine. Now, I'm not God, but I do rule the utilities coming down that that public road. You would have to come to me and ask the question, can I have my utilities connected to the utilities right on your lot? And I'd say, $1,000. Or I could be really mean and say, you know what, it's gonna cost you $50,000, whatever, per connection. So your dream land that cost you $50,000 or $400,000, whatever your land is on some of those landlocked pictures and stuff, all of a sudden is going to be double, triple the price because now you have to get easements and costs for all those things. So here's some suggestions to the commission and to homeowners. You can have a 15-foot right-of-way on one side of the street. Okay, that's an option. You could have only 7 or 8 foot right-of-ways. I did some research, and there's some counties that have that. But there's a lot of problems when you only have 7 or 8 feet. People should never buy on these choke points things because they might as well just stay on the highways, county roads, and city streets where they can connect directly to the utilities. And the last one is for homeowners. You will have to live off the grid if you don't want to connect because you don't have those easements to get down the thing. This idea about voting to me is ludicrous. It's stupid because we have no idea what utilities will need in the future. Thank you for your time and your service, Commissioner.
Thank you. Is it Robert H. Thomas?
Yes, I've been a,
If you'd state your name for the
Robert
microphone.
Thomas. I've been a resident here since 2019. Couple of questions I have for you on this is that everybody knows that every law that's created is done for one or two reasons. Either to help everybody in the community or somebody on the other side gets to make a profit. That's it. You can ask any lawyer, he'll tell you that, okay? That's all there is to it. And according to this, what we're asking, or what you're asking, is that we go back to the 1820s where we had the 20-foot highways, and where two vehicles cannot pass safely. And if you check with your insurance companies, you have to have so much clearance so safety vehicles or emergency vehicles can make it to your property to protect you. If you don't have that variance to get in there, they have the rights to cancel your homeowner's insurance, or if they want to continue it, they can also increase it. But any safety vehicle or emergency vehicle has to have easy, safe access to get to your property. That's required. And the other thing is, somebody's going to make a profit off of this. Is it the county? Is it a realtor? Is it a developer? And as we all know, developers are only in this business and in this life for one thing, is that to make money for themselves and somebody else. And if you look around, they will sacrifice anything and everything to get that profit. They don't care because it's nothing off their nose. So I think you ought to look at it a little closer and decide, is this the way to go? The pictures that you show a lot of properties, but it doesn't show any benefits for anybody that lives in this county other than the people who are going to make money. So, think about it. Is money more important than the safety of the people who live here? And the people who move in here, how many of these people are going to find out afterwards that we don't care about them? We just want the almighty dollar. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. We do need to hold that down, and again, it goes back to that statement of emotion over information. We aren't going back to 2008, not going back to 1818, we're going back to 2008, and so we can talk about that in just a moment. John Richardson.
My name is John Richardson. This issue has been tossed around for quite some time, as y'all have mentioned. Back in June 6, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Johnson made a presentation regarding make a motion to make this change. During that meeting, one of the commissioners asked specifically of Mr. Johnson, is this because of the ongoing issue resolving or regarding Johns Marine and Andy Lee, who's planning to develop the Arrowhead Peninsula. Your answer was indeed not. It has to do for the benefit of a lot of taxpayers in the county who may have problems dividing their property. And of course, at the last meeting, and as we've discussed today, at the last meeting, Ms. Lucretia Morgan showed that a lot of those properties, that's not really an issue. Okay, so that seemed to be an obfuscation. Let's be realistic. It was really because of many, if it was really because of many concerned citizens who want to make this change, where are they? Have you received a whole lot of comments that needs to be changed and they have problems? No. In reality, we understand, being realistic, that it seems that there's only one person or certain people who want to change. And Mr. Johnson, who is a realtor and who works for the developer, Andy Lee, as my understanding, would realize substantial gain by being able to develop more lots on Arrowhead Peninsula. Article 4, Section 2241 requires that candidates for Oconee County boards, commissions, committees, or similar entities complete the questionnaire for board commission. And there are two questions on there that seem to relate to this operation here. Do you have any interest in any business that is or will do business with Oconee County? Do you have any conflict of interest or a reason to routinely abstain from a vote? Be interested to know how those were responded to. Section 2-241 also requires the following. Members of county boards shall not use membership on the county board to obtain a direct personal economic interest, an economic interest for the immediate family of the member, an economic interest for an individual with whom the member is associated, or an economic interest for a business with which the member is associated. These requirements are applicable to all county boards and their members, both through the South Carolina Ethics Act and separately through this section. Okay? The State Ethics Commission Rules of Conduct states a public official, public member, or public employee may not knowingly use his official office, membership, or employment to influence a government decision to obtain an economic interest for himself, family member, etc. On the Lake Huey real estate website, Mr. Mike Johnson is listed as an agent. Section 32.4 of Article 4 identifies the following with regard to removal of members on the commission. They can be removed for several reasons, violations of, but one of them is violation of the South Carolina Ethics Act. I think it's clear that there's an egregious conflict of interest here, and certain members should be abstaining or recusing themselves before any of these proceedings go further. And I'm amazed that the county attorney has not really objected to this.
To your statement?
What's that?
I'm sorry.
I'm just amazed, that's all.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, it's not the county attorney's office to cause members to recuse themselves. It's their decision. It's between them and the state ethics board.
Okay, well, then I guess it should
So
be
I have
discussed
to-
with the
I have to
ethics
sit
board.
on my hands.
Okay. Great.
So I apologize to all the folks here. These are the kind of confusions that we talk about, trying to hopefully get past, as James had brought those up.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
There's no cross-examination.
No, you're right.
I would like for you to comment on that, but just not right now. Just wait until the comments are over, and then you'll have your say, Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
If you need to get some of his information down to respond to it, maybe he needs to give you a copy of it.
I have a copy here for the record.
You're welcome to leave it there. That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Next is Fred, is it Mitchell or Michaels?
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Fred Michaels, and I'm here with my wife, Ann, and I'm in the Oak Point development. I happen to be the new president of that HOA, but I speak for myself and not for anybody else. But I'm not sure I can top the last citizen that spoke. A couple weeks ago, I signed a petition that was in favor of not changing the regulation 26.2. I was just informed about a day or two ago that my signature was challenged as not valid by someone on this board or some other member of it. And I think that's completely inappropriate. I was never contacted about my signature. My property records are there. I put my 812 Barnes Road address on that petition. I probably had an email on there, I'm not sure about that. And you could easily check that with property records, or voter registration, or a driver's license, or something like that. And for my signature to be called invalid on such a petition, I find completely reprehensible. And I would challenge the Planning Commission or others that might be supporting that to investigate it and make sure that these kinds of actions are not tolerated by this committee. Okay. I am still in support of no changes to the 26.2 for private roads and private drives and private driveways. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it'll end up having a disastrous effect as it gets expanded and extrapolated and challenged and changed in the future. It will result in things that are changing in public density or housing density. It'll affect the safety, as the last citizen pointed out, regarding access for roads, and that'll influence everybody in the county. And I don't think it's that hard for any developer, any real estate person, any homeowner, any potential buyer to find out what the regulations are before they try to sell a property or to buy a property. It took me 20 seconds on the Oconee County website, and congratulations to the Oconee County, to find that particular wording of 26.2. It's easy to find, and if you're going to spend $50 or $500,000 for a piece of property, and you have some plans for it, or potential plans for it, or just dreams for it, you should know what those regulations are. And such a limitation of 50 feet of easement is not that extensive. And I think these examples here, just show that the people are trying to skew what the real effect is here. Every one of those had adjacent properties. People can figure out how to remortgage. They can figure out how to change the title. They can, whether it's any of those things. And so I would urge the Planning Commission not to approve any changes to this 26.2. Thank you.
James, sorry to interrupt. He had said that a Planning Commission member called his name out. Are you aware of that at all?
Not of any particular name being called out. I added the cover sheet after we talked on Saturday to the back of the material that it's difficult to assess the validity without any representative of the petition. So that's what was added beforehand, but no specific person was called into that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Next person, Lucretia Morgan.
Good evening. My name is Lucretia Morgan, and I'm here tonight as a concerned, tax-paying citizen. I'm firmly opposed to any changes to Section 26.2, and I have a serious concerns about both the substance and the proposed amendment and the way it has been brought forward. First, let me begin by addressing the revised transcript Mr. Johnson included in the backup materials. The transcript I submitted was meant to convey the key points I made during the April 7th meeting. After watching the full recording of my remarks, I can confirm that any differences were minor, such as saying a instead of the, or omitting an adjective. In contrast, the revision version submitted by Mr. Johnson, presumably prepared by a paralegal or assistant, also contains errors such as quoting me saying dissuade when I clearly said sway. Am I back in English class with a teacher marking out my sentences? This is not about semantics or word choice. The real issue is why I, a private citizen, am being treated, though, as I'm on trial. I'm here exercising my constitutional right to participate in public disclosure. And yet, this hyper-focus on language has been used to discredit me and divert attention from the actual topic at hand. In all my years attending meetings, I have never seen a member of the public subjected to this kind of treatment. Let me be clear, I will not be silenced, and I will not be intimidated. If anything, this experience has only strengthened my commitment to speaking up, and I hope it empowers others to do the same. I suspect this backlash stems from a comment I made during the April 7th meeting regarding Mr. Johnson's subdivision request. For the record, I did not accuse him of submitting an accurate application. My point was simple. If he adds a fourth tiny home to his project, he will be required to meet the 50-foot right-of-way just like everyone else. That means he would stand to gain personally if this ordinance is changed. It's unfortunate that I had to spend so much of my time tonight defending my participation in this process, but I will not be deterred. The public has a right to question what happens here, and I intend to continue doing exactly that. So now let me highlight a few key points regarding the proposed change to the right-of-way and setbacks. According to Chapter 32-4, the Planning Commission's plans and programs must be designed to promote public health, safety, morals, convenience, prosperity, or the general welfare, as well as the efficiency and economy of the county. Specific planning elements must be passed upon careful and comprehensive surveys and studies of existing conditions and probable future developments and included means of implementation. I copied that straight from the county website. That's verbatim. Where are those studies? Where's the public data supporting this change? Has a public survey been completed? The only public material provided is a presentation representing 13 parcels, all of which are inaccurate or misrepresented. Or any potential conflicts of interest disclosed to the board or public. Who truly benefits from this amendment? The answer appears clear. Developers. These changes reduce the amount of land they must allocate for roads, shrink setbacks, and ultimately allow them to sell more lots. There's a financial gain for developers, not for families. How does removing the right-of-way requirement on private roads enhance public safety or general welfare? Planning codes exist for a reason, to ensure safety, support responsible growth, and preserve the long-term health of our communities. Weakening those codes simply because the land is privately owned sets a dangerous precedent. If that logic holds, should we eliminate septic and well setbacks too? Should we abolish building codes? Should we disregard the lake overlay? Where does it stop? I respectfully urge this commission to reject these proposed changes, investigate how and why it was introduced in this manner, and ensure that the public has a meaningful voice in shaping the future of our communities. Thank you for your time and your service.
All right, Steve Harris.
Good evening. I'm Steve Harris. First, I'd like to thank each of the commissioners for their willingness to devote their time to make Oconee County a safe and pleasant place to live. It's a big responsibility. A theme expressed at the last meeting and again tonight with regard to right-of-ways is that we need fewer rules and government interference. And I've been asked if I agree with that. I said, yeah, of course, I agree with that. But then I got to thinking about, is this really the way I want it to be, or is this the way it is? I would wager that everyone in this room has followed hundreds of rules today. Ones that are intended to promote safety, fairness, and order. Ones that build social trust and create a sense of community and belonging. Speed limits, stop signs, the stripes in the parking lot, when I can speak, how long I can speak, all rules. It appears that this commission has decided that out of tens of thousands of rules, a right-of-way rule that has existed for 20 years, that has positive aspects for the safety and consistency of property rights, and that has had very little negative feedback from the citizens, has to go. That rule. Why did that one rule out of thousands get picked? Who benefits from that change? The rules of procedure for this commission state in Article 2, Section 4, that it follows the model rules of parliamentary procedure for South Carolina counties. And in the very next Section 5 addresses that members of the commission must disqualify themselves from voting and from even discussing any item in which they have a personal or business interest. Let's go to the state rules to clarify that. Model Rule 11, conflicts of interest, states, quote, no member of county council or of a county board or commission may knowingly use his or her official office to obtain an economic interest for himself or herself, an immediate family member, or an individual or business with whom he or she is associated. If it even appears that a conflict of interest exists, you shall prepare a written statement describing the matter requiring action or decision and the nature of the potential conflict of interest. That statement then must be filed with the minutes. At the last meeting, certain commissioners openly admitted they have a personal interest in changing the right-of-way rule. Yet it appears they fully intend to vote on the matter. It appears that they've already breached their fiduciary duties by discussing this. Remember, you can't discuss this matter. It's not just voting, you can't discuss it. In conflict of the conflict of interest rules, which Model 11 rules, I'll quote again, the Rule 11 states, is a crime of moral turpitude, meaning use of official position to obtain financial gain. If I were a commissioner who does not already have a conflict of interest, I would make certain that I don't now appear to have aided and abetted this crime. I would suggest that it would be wise to table this matter indefinitely, or at least until the commission has been cleansed of those who have openly violated their responsibilities. There are no negative consequences to retaining the current right-of-way rules, as there is a proven procedure for seeking variance if needed and appropriate. There is plenty of risk in proceeding with this matter in violation of county and state rules. Just like you can't unring a bell, there's no way to cure the previous violations of conflict of interest by persons who should have disqualified themselves. Thank you.
Amy, C-O-U-R, I'm sorry?
Corner.
Yes, Ms. Corner, please come up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Corder. I am relatively new to the area. We've been here less than 2 years. I can tell you I moved from an area where what is happening here happened there. We had developers come into our little neck of the woods, and they were granted concession and easement and variances across the board. And the area that I had lived in for 19 years ceased to look like what it was. I'm urging the commission to deny the request to change these variances, because I've witnessed firsthand what happens once you open Pandora's box. Once you open that box, one easement, one variance goes. It is the catalyst for all the rest that will follow. Future developers seize on what was given up and take that opportunity to strengthen their case to get this, that, and the other thing changed. The area I was in became a developer's dream, and it was a resident's nightmare. The developers came in, changed what they needed to change, they built and left. The residents were left with what was behind, which was the aftermath. County services that were overburdened, an area that had environmental pollution, noise pollution, you name it, it was there. Now granted, this is not quite the same thing, but you get where I'm going. Once you make one concession, there's a reason rules are in place. There's a reason they've lasted this long. It's for the betterment of the community. And while I can tell you that each of the elected officials who chose to go against the will of the community did not retain their positions in the next election, it didn't help, because the damage was already done. The residents were the ones left holding the bag. It was the residents that came and actually then sought to get these positions to try to undo what had been done, but you could only work with what there was moving forward. I'm going to echo prior speakers and say that while I don't understand how this is not an issue with the Code of Ordinances, specifically 2-241, I'm going to just say the ordinances are in place for a reason. And it appears you heard in the past from my research from emergency services and the community that support keeping things the way they are, and also had serious concerns for the consequences of changing them. Just a side note, when we come to the ballot box and we elect people to represent us in county positions, the voting community kind of likes to put these issues to bed. They like to think that the people they put in positions of power are making decisions that are for the best of the community now and in the future. We don't like, and which is what happened where I came from, always having to look over our shoulder and say, hey, what's going on here? We like to go to bed thinking that our community is being protected and the things that drew us to this area, again, educated, planned growth is always needed. But is what we're asking to be done serving any real purpose? And I looked, and I'm a social media person, I didn't see anybody complaining and asking for these things to be changed. So I don't know how it all got started, because again, I'm new. But I just ask that we do thoughtful, growth and development and thoughtful changes and seek to try to fix what needs to be fixed, but at the same time, don't give up what makes this area great. Because I came from something where that happened, and everybody's leaving. Thank you very much.
Serena Richardson.
Hello, let me introduce myself again. My name is Serena Brown Richardson, and my family's resided in Oconee County for 5 generations. I'm here to voice my public concern with respect to the recent activities impacting Oconee County's road safety. These 2 long-standing ordinances, I'm not going to do the numbers, which require this 50-foot right-of-way, have been in effect for approximately 20 years and provide a uniform, clear standard which enhances road safety for all citizens. After I read the Seneca Journal article back in June of 2022, myself and many members of the public became very concerned with the detrimental road safety effects such as a reversal would bring on our community. I raised the public concern back then on 7/7 at the 2022 Planning Commission meeting and presented the petition, which I do have this today, my petition, that with me. And now we are 3 years later revisiting the same issue. We have spent so much time doing this, so much meetings have been spent, people sitting here for hours. I completely understand that in this instance, the public road standard is not being changed and that the proposal is only concerning private roads because some private property owners might have issues when trying to subdivide the property because of not having sufficient road right-of-way. However, the interest must be balanced against the health and safety of the public by having uniform right-of-way standards for all roads, public or private, which has been a tremendous value to private road owners and the county. The 50-foot right-of-way benefits all Oconee citizens by improving safety for vehicles accessing private roads, ensuring sufficient room for modern-day maintenance vehicles that they might hire to service their roads, and allow the county to step in, should the private road owner request, to assume responsibility of the road if necessary. Why is there a sudden need to make roads less safe by eliminating these long-standing ordinances for private roads and drives? The 50-foot right-of-way has been the regulation for private roads serving more than 10 homes and private drives serving up to 10 for more than 20 years. The regulation was instituted to ensure all roads in the county have been consistent, safe standards and having footage allowance on either side of the pavement. Whether the road is private or public, the right-of-way regulation is considered for private roads across surrounding counties. And I wanted to make sure Mr. Nix got the answer to that. I know one of the commission members brought up that, but Anderson has a minimum 50-foot private road, maximum 10 lots with each lot size 2 acres. Greenville is 42 to 52, however, it is unpaved and a maximum of only 6 lots. Without county approval, minimum 40-foot right-of-way. Private roads, depending on traffic volume and pavement, minimum road is 42 to 52. Pickens is 50-foot private drive, common drive with maximum of 10 lots with maintenance agreement and easement per unified development standards. Spartanburg 40, private gravel road with 8 maximum homes must have 40-foot right-of-way and must be cleared. Lawrence County, 50-foot private roads and drives must meet public standards unless approved by Public Work Director. So, just note the 2 that were a little bit less were only because there were smaller home sizes. Removing this regulation would allow developers in the county to develop parcels of land using private roads with no right-of-way, making them inherently less safe. Given that the definition of private roads in Oconee County is any road that serves a minimum of 11 lots, we could see much larger developments using private roads with no right-of-ways. We need to maintain the standards that we set and the public has come to rely on and to ensure the safety of our citizens. Furthermore, the statement the Planning Commission referred to the Transportation Committee back in 2022 that it was unnecessary and overly restricted on private roads and on private property and violates private property rights. Given that Oconee County has no limits on the number of lots that can be present on a private road, a standard right-of-way is necessary for residents living on those roads to be safe and to be able to maintain their roads. Given that the standard is consistent with surrounding counties as has been in effect for 20 years in Oconee County, a 50-foot right-of-way is obviously not overly restrictive. Certainly, it doesn't violate private property rights because private property owners have an easy recourse to be able to design and develop their land. As Planning Commissioner Member David Nix back in 2022 correctly identified, if a situation occurs where a resident does not have the required footage for the right-of-way, that citizen could easily request a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. The BZA overwhelmingly approves of variances requested that are presented to them, supporting balancing the private property owner with the interests and general welfare of the community at large. Numerous county ordinances exist that govern what a private owner can do with their land, so therefore ordinances do not necessarily violate property rights. I also agree with the Oconee County Director of Public Works, Kyle Reed, when he presented the following points at the Transportation Committee on 7/19/22. Vegetation management becomes an issue without a 50-foot right-of-way, regardless of whether you have 15 or 100 homes. After 3 years, cars will be driving down the middle of the road in unsafe conditions due to vegetation overgrowth. Right-of-way is fundamental for maintaining a road. Without right-of-way, it is difficult to maintain a safe and proper road, especially with vegetation. Right to access is also important when working with emergency management. During the April 7th meeting, basically Kyle Reed with Roads and Bridges and Fire Chief Chris Smith expressed they need the 50-foot right-of-way. Listen to them. Chairman Johnson and Haney tried to confuse the issue with their filibuster tactics and invalid misrepresentation of land examples that don't even need the 50-foot right-of-way. Seems a little fishy. I'm hoping to see the 2 emails that were read last week in the backup material. I didn't see it. I was offended by how disrespectfully and dismissive
Commissioner
Chairman
Jones,
Johnson was
we've
after.
gone way over all the time.
Let her talk. Yeah, make a motion to disband. Are you almost done?
I'm right here.
We've not given, you made a motion, is there a second?
Just let her finish.
I'll second, let her finish.
Thank you.
All those in favor of letting her to continue to go over, raise your hand. We've got several, 1, 2, 3 more.
3 more.
Thank you. So I'm hoping to see those emails from the last meeting. I was offended by how disrespectfully dismissive Chairman Johnson was after reading the one where the lady made a mistake in the numbers of the ordinance. Some citizens don't have 2.5 hours to sit here to have their voices heard, and I believe all 13 of those emails should be read because there are people with this meeting being called so quickly or not being able to come and the Easter weekend. And as I understand, members of the county board generally as defined in public officials under the South Carolina Ethics Act, South Carolina Code 1976, 8-13-100 ET-SEQ, as amended. It shall be the responsibility of members, individuals, and collectively to become familiar with the provisions of the law and conduct themselves accordingly. These requirements are applicable to all county boards and their members, both through South Carolina Ethics and separately through this section. I can't help but question if all the members on the planning committee are adhering to these ethics, especially a lot of the different things I heard. Some people are uncomfortable speaking in public. I would like anybody behind me that opposes this to stand and let the commission see you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Commission members, hear our voices and see that our county does not want this ordinance changed. I am passionate about road safety and balancing the rights of all individuals with the needs of the community and the county. I have a petition with me tonight with almost 500 signatures and property owners who clearly understand what is being proposed and they want it. They don't want it to go away. In closing, I am requesting support from you. Please vote no. Thanks for your time. Thank you for the extra time. And I'm going to submit this as a copy for the record. And I'll get copies of these made. I'm sorry, my mom, today I didn't get to get copies, but I'll get copies of the commission, of this, my petition, and get it back to the commission. Thank you.
Sherry Crisp.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Crisp. I'd like to express my concern regarding the rush push to change a longstanding regulation, especially under such questionable circumstances. First, this special meeting was scheduled during a time when many residents are away from Easter and spring break, limiting public participation. That alone raises concerns about transparency and timing. And why didn't you wait 2 more weeks for next month's meeting? Why is it such a push? You said you wanted to have less meetings, but here you're having another meeting. My foremost reason for speaking is the safety of our firefighters. They are responding to emergencies at all times of the day or night in all kinds of weather. They are risking their lives to serve and protect us and our properties, with many of our firefighters being volunteers. Let us not make it any more difficult or dangerous for them or for other first responders and medical personnel whose duties are sometimes intertwined. Second, the chairman, who is a realtor employed by a developer, has a clear conflict of interest in this matter. It's troubling that this change is being fast-tracked under his leadership, particularly when we consider the parcels he's promoted in support of this issue since 2022 are not valid. If we're questioning the validity of a public petition, we should also be questioning the validity of his actions. We're being told this regulation change is about helping families divide their land. If that were truly the case, where are these families? Why haven't they gone before the Board of Zoning Appeals, as is the standard process for seeking a road width variance? Since 2017, only one such request has been made. Interestingly, it happened to involve a project associated with the chairman's employer. Let's call this what it is, a home cook scenario designed to serve a specific development interest. And with the BZA known for granting variances with almost no denials, the argument that this regulation is obstructing families simply does not hold up. I urge this commission to slow down, listen to the community, and ensure that any changes made are for the public good, not private gain. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Let's see, Michael Grant, or Mitch, M-I-C-H.
Good evening, my name is Michael Grant. Please bear with me, I've made some changes to my statement here, or what I'm proposing or not proposing, to omit things that would only be repeating, that I would only be repeating. In the June 6, 2022 meeting of this commission, Mike Johnson stood here at this podium and passionately advocated for the reduction of the 50-foot right-of-way to 20 foot. He presented several examples for a reduction. He speaks of how this guy and this guy are going to be sorely mistaken when they go to build on their property, but can't because of county regulations. And since he threw out several what-ifs at the last meeting on April 7th, 2025, I will also. The first being, what if a landowner only sold property with a less than 50-foot right-of-way to limit future development? What if some guy buys a piece of land along one of these roads with the reduced right-of-way and does not have access to power from the backside of his property? What if a well does not provide him with potable water? Does up the creek without a paddle come to mind? In contrast, the first two guys could go before the VZA and ask for a variance, as could the property owner mentioned that has 146 acres with 32 feet of excess. In recent years, the BZA did grant a variance down to 31.9 feet to the owners of approximately 15 acres. With the utmost respect, can these reductions actually benefit you, your families, your friends, or your employers? If so, be beyond reproach and vote no to these changes. Thank you all.
Perry Smith.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, finally, we got a group of people that's willing to stand up for personal property rights. Thank you. I appreciate it. I have attended multiple meetings now on the same topic, and throughout each one, I've consistently spoken in support of property rights for everyone. What's being discussed today benefits all private property owners while not infringing on our property rights. I own a private drive, and I see no justification for giving up 20 or 32 more feet to the government. That land belongs to me and my family. Why should I have to worry about whether my children, my 3 children, will be allowed to build homes on our property and live alongside of us? Some families actually value that lifestyle still. Some don't. Obviously, many don't. The real concern here is the growing effort to control what private property owners can or cannot do with their land. These decisions should not be dictated by the average citizen who do not share in the ownership or responsibilities. We must stop overreaching into each other's rights and lives. This country was built on the principle of individual freedom, and that includes the right to use one's property as they see fit within reasonable and lawful limits. It is not the role of others to impose their preferences or restrict opportunities for families who wish to build and grow together on land they own. Let's return to the values of personal liberty, respect for property rights, and the belief that we should live and let live. I urge this body to protect the rights of landowners and resist the policies that would limit them unnecessarily. Thank y'all for what you're doing. It's about time we're giving back to the citizens. And I've been a citizen here. I've lived here since 1970. I've been here quite a while. I've seen all of this silliness come. It started way long ago. It started before now. This started years ago. Too bad we didn't close the barn door years ago. Thank you.
We are at the end of this sign-up sheet. We were going to discuss whether we were going to read those out. It is 7:30. Is there an opinion to the group?
I want to hear them. I'd like to hear them.
Okay.
Make a motion that we read.
I'll second it. He'll second it. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Jan, I'm just gonna go through these, I'm not gonna pause between them, so we'll get 11 of these, and I'll go as fast as I can, okay? I strongly support Oconee County continuing to establish public right-of-way beside all streets and roads. We moved to Oconee County in 2004. One afternoon, I left the house to go pick up our daughter from Walhalla High School. As I was driving down the narrow 2-lane road out of our main road, I encountered a house on fire. Emergency personnel were just arriving, and I had no way to get around their vehicles. I called the school, and they had our daughter come to the office at the end of the day to wait for me. I was held up for about an hour as firefighters got the fire under control. Upon return to our neighborhood, we had to park on our main road until enough emergency vehicles departed the scene to allow access back to our house. This experience is why I support public rights-of-way on both roads within neighborhoods and on narrow access roads. As the commission reviews guidelines for development, I encourage you to consider widening these narrow access roads and right-of-ways to ensure the safety of emergency personnel and the public. These roads continue to be a hazard to the safety of emergency personnel and the public. Thank you for your attention to this matter that affects all citizens and public safety personnel. That is Martha Fowler. So this one is actually about the petition and not about the ordinance. If you're questioning whether or not I signed the petition regarding changes to ordinance 26.2, I hereby swear that I did sign the petition. I'm a resident of Oconee County. I'm against changing the ordinance. I'm unable to attend this meeting. I request that you vote against the proposed changes, and that's Ron Barley on Barnes Road. I fully support not amending ordinance 26.2. I have indicated this already once by signing the petition. The chairman to question the validity of the petition. I'm writing this email as a second attempt to voice my opposition to amending ordinance 26.2. I can verify that all those who signed the petition, actually its position, and had the chance to read the existing ordinance 26.2. You need to hear from me a third time. I fully understand the issue at hand and as do many who signed the petition since we live on a private drive. And that's Karen Hartman. Any effort to eliminate or reduce public rights of way on roads and streets will negatively impact the rights and safety of property owners whose property abuts those streets and roads. Public rights of way are essential pathways that enable emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles to reach residents and facilities when the need arises. In times of emergency, it is not unusual for a roadway to be impassable. Do you, in fact, want to create a situation where a house burns to the ground because a fire truck could not reach the house? Or do you want to create a situation where a person dies because an ambulance could not quickly reach a person in distress? As Oconee County continues to grow, it's entirely possible that property owners along a private road would want the road to be converted to a public street. With no public rights of way, that would be difficult or impassable. Public rights of way also provide the installation of utilities, which enables the owner of vacant property to develop it. Elimination of public rights of way deny property owners the right to have essential utilities brought to their property. In spite of the potential personal safety problems, the proposed elimination of current rights of way requirements seems to be attractive to some property owners, developers, and real estate agents. However, if this proposal is passed, minimum road width should be increased to at least 28 feet. A 20-foot wide road with no public right-of-way is simply a disaster waiting to happen. I'm writing to express my strong support for the county's continued recognition and protection of established rights of way. These public access routes are essential to the safety, accessibility, and overall well-being of our community. Rights of way play a critical role in ensuring the emergency services can reach all areas quickly without delay. Fire trucks, ambulances, law enforcement rely on these corridors to respond quickly during emergencies. In times of fire, medical crisis, or natural disasters, uninterrupted access can save lives and protect property. These routes are also vital for evacuation planning, utility maintenance, and long-term infrastructure development. In wildfire-prone areas especially, rights-of-way support fire prevention efforts and enable the rapid deployment of firefighting resources. Their preservation is not just a matter of convenience, it's a matter of public safety. Additionally, rights-of-way support essential public services and help maintain orderly growth and development. They reflect a thoughtful balance between private property interests and the broader needs of the community, ensuring that residents remain connected and emergency access is never compromised. I encourage the County and Planning Commission to continue prioritizing the preservation of these rights and to actively communicate their purpose to the public. Maintaining these corridors demonstrates a clear commitment by you to safety, accessibility, and good planning. Thank you for your attention to this important matter and for your continued leadership in protecting the interests and well-being of our community. That's Gary Owens. I'm writing in support of the current ordinance requiring 50 feet right-of-ways on private roads. Oconee County taxpayers pay for emergency and school transportation services. Therefore, all new roads constructed, whether they be public or private, should continue to require 50 feet right-of-way to allow for efficient and safe access of emergency vehicles, school buses, etc. Developers must adhere to this ordinance because of the long-term service demands of the subdivision residences. Further, safe ingress-egress of emergency vehicles should be an assumed condition of quality residential development. I do not believe the majority of Oconee County citizens want more development, period. However, at minimum, residential developers should construct appropriately sized streets. Otherwise, it's just bad planning. Bad planning may cost taxpayers down the road if private roads are annexed or if emergency vehicles require repairs, accommodations due to narrow streets. I realize the county will not annex roads that do not meet specifications, but why not get it right to start with? Don't let developers pass their responsibilities to the taxpayers. Most importantly, eliminating the 50 feet right-of-way will result in poorly accessed roads and potentially lives lost. And that's Heather Ramsey. I strongly support Oconee County continuing to establish public rights-of-way beside all streets and roads. I have lived in Oconee County for 23 years, and I have seen firsthand the importance of public rights-of-way on both roads within neighborhoods and on narrow access roads. I'll detail both instances. When we moved into our neighborhood, gas was not one of the utilities available. That was true until perhaps 50% of our neighborhood was built out. When gas became available, lines were installed in the rights-of-way along all roads to serve customers wanting gas appliances. Imagine if there'd been no public rights-of-way on these interior roads. If an owner planted bushes or trees in a section that had to be dug up for an installation, he could refuse. Or he might say no simply because he didn't like the neighbor 2 doors down who wanted gas. No one can guess how infrastructure might change in the future. Public rights-of-way provide flexibility and ensure neighbors, regardless of where they live, can opt into new technologies. This is in the public interest. Second, several years back, a major house fire occurred in our neighborhood. The pictures below, taken on Lutherland Road, show how even with fire trucks and emergency vehicles pulled into public rights-of-way, traffic was impeded. Fortunately, no one had to evacuate, but if they had, the rights-of-way allowed the firefighters in and it still provided a narrow public access route for residents. Public rights-of-way are essential for firefighting, evacuation, utility maintenance, and long-term infrastructure development. Please do not compromise public safety in order to give a handful of developers a few extra yards to meet lot size minimums. I believe such a decision would endanger public safety and would ultimately make neighborhoods without such rights undesirable, as Linda loved it. Commission members, I'm a homeowner in Oconee County and do not agree with or approve any change to the right-of-way on setback requirements. Please listen and follow your constituents' wishes. Do not reduce setbacks. Do not increase the number of units to be served on the driveway. Do not increase road width and parking areas in subdivisions. Please record my email and let it reflect that I'm sternly against any changes. That's Marie Cantrell. I strongly support Oconee County's continued recognition and protection of established and future rights-of-way. My husband and I have lived in Oconee County for 24 years, and I have seen the critical aspects of establishing rights-of-way. We live in Oconee 1, 2, we live in a Huey 1, 2, 3, and when Duke replaced the buried electrical lines in our subdivision several years ago, it was certainly to their advantage and to our neighborhood's advantage that yards, trees, bushes did not have to be torn out in order for the new lines to be laid. When the company who laid the new lines was digging to put in the lines, our water line was cut. One of our next door neighbors' water line was cut, and the neighbor on the other side of our property had his gas line cut. These were the problems that we knew about firsthand. It was certainly for everyone's safety that there was a right-of-way for parking of the fire trucks, Seneca Light and Water Company trucks, and Fort Hill gas trucks. And so very importantly, space for the workers to remedy the problems. I ask that the County and Planning Commission preserve these rights-of-way and rights-of-way for any future development. Please ensure that the continuing requirements of rights-of-way be enforced as necessary to ensure safety, accessibility, and overall good planning. These public corridors of rights-of-way are necessary for the well-being of our communities. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my concerns and for your continued support of communities. That's Martha Steele. My name is Randelli Smith, and with my husband, I own the house at 339 Knox Campground Road in Seneca. I'm writing to you in anticipation of your scheduled meeting tonight to discuss this subject topic. We are vehemently opposed to eliminating the 50-foot right-of-way as we believe it will unduly endanger the community and lessen the existing quality of the roads. I'm aware of other property owners who are also opposed and hope that they too have reached out to you. Thank you for your attention. As a property owner in Oconee County, I'm opposed to removing the 50-foot right-of-way clearance. I do not feel that this is in the best interest of current landowners and would only allow developers to infringe on the rights of current owners and exploit the underdeveloped land around our beautiful lake. I would like this email read in the meeting, and that is from Scott.
Is that all of them?
That is.
All right. On to, are we getting on with business here? It sounds like that health and safety were issued. We heard disastrous effects. let me clarify a few things. We tried to clarify them in the very beginning, and yet we still got a lot of information that was said by these folks to be incorrect. We changed the ordinance in 2008, not quite 20 years ago yet. And as far as our meetings, just so everybody knows, planning commission meetings are held on the first Monday and third Monday of the month. And that's the case time and time again. So the meeting wasn't set based on a holiday or anything like that. It was set based on the time that we would set it. It's just that we were bringing it back. And hopefully somebody will make a motion, again, considering the importance of this, that we continue with the double meetings per month as we always have, as we extend into the future. As far as it's been mentioned several times that I'm a realtor, I am a realtor. I'm a realtor with Lake Kiwi Real Estate. I do not work for Lake Kiwi Dental. I do not work for Lake Kiwi OBGYN, and I do not work for Lake Kiwi Development, entirely different entity. I don't make any money or have any special interest. I, like the other 3,000 other real estate agents, if that development or any development is built, I, like them, have to go out and try to sell that property just like they do. It was mentioned about an ethics issue. I actually talked to the ethics board several years back at the state level, and they said, no, this is you could probably tell me better, Mr. Large class exception, whatever that means, but mainly in that what we're talking about is not in any way affect one parcel or one property or one development, that this is dealing with all future developments, as was mentioned several times, even by people up here. Deals with all developments, and again, all real estate agents. It was talking about health and safety and the disastrous effects, and Mr. Michaels had mentioned that about the petition. I will say there is a petition in Oak Point that was put out, and I'd like to know who said names, but I did ask the county not to publicize that for the public records, not until we were able to meet, and this is why. We have a petition with 23 names on it from Oak Point subdivision, and Oak Point is a great example of what we're talking about. It's been argued by several people here, including myself, that neighborhoods like Oak Point subdivisions are great neighborhoods. This neighborhood has some roads that are 50 feet right-of-ways and some roads that are less than 50 feet right-of-ways. In fact, Oak Point, people own to the center line of the road in those private roads rather than even a right-of-way. So I and others here have argued that neighborhoods like Oak Point are great neighborhoods without any issue regarding fire access, safety, disastrous effects, contribute to lost lives. I have proposed that county should change the right-of-way ordinance back to allow neighborhoods like Oak Point to be built. However, others have argued that subdivisions such as Oak Point should never be built again due to fire and safety issues because of neighborhoods built with less than a 50-foot right-of-way are a fire hazard or a safety concern, provide disastrous effects by someone from the neighborhood. But now the people on this petition have surprised me, because according to what I'm reading, the residents of the neighborhood have signed a public document suggesting future neighborhoods built to road standards under 50 feet should never be built again. Here's why this surprises me. As a realtor, it's important. I sold a couple of properties last year in a neighborhood in Clemson. The neighborhood was having water issues, which was causing an integrity issue on part of the pavement. The community went to the city as a public record with their concern. It worked out because the city decided to fix it, but here's the deal. Until they did, it was on the public record. It became a material fact, and as a real estate agent, the real estate agents had to disclose before they sold any property in that area that there was a road problem. So it shocks me now as a realtor that I've argued repeatedly that neighborhoods such as Oak Point, Waterside Crossing, Beacon Shores, and many other neighborhoods built to standards that are not allowed today are perfectly safe and have not had issues of fire safety, road construction, ingress, egress, or any problem like that. However, the signers of this petition, what they have done is asked to be put on public record that Oak Point and neighborhoods like it should not be built under that kind of standard, under that kind of neighborhood, that neighborhood has, because they are considered unsafe based on today's standards. If we make a motion to change this ordinance back, then Oak Point and others are clearly safe. But to sit there and say, I mean, we've had people in the audience, we've had our roads and bridges with Kyle argue that neighborhoods built with less than a 50-foot right-of-way are unsafe and problematic. But if we sit there and say that we don't want to have a reduction, we are saying that neighborhoods like that with less than a 50-foot right-of-way are unsafe. And unfortunately, Oak Point has signed a petition to go and ask to be put in the public records.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
What did the petition say? And
so I had originally asked James, how did the petition come about? What were they signing and what did they think they were signing? I actually have clients in the neighborhood, and I actually called one and asked, what were you told when you signed? Just curious. And they said, we were told that this was to stop a developer from a development. It doesn't do that at all, as James and Mr. Root had said. What we are trying to do here has nothing to do with that, with stopping a developer, Arrowhead Point or otherwise. What it has done, though.
Is that who it was talking about?
Well, I don't know. That they didn't say. That apparently the signer of the petition said that the person just said it was to stop a development. He couldn't remember the details as to which development it was, but that it would stop developers. And so, heck, I'd probably sign that too. But unfortunately, the concern is that it does put that into a compromising position that neighborhoods like this with less than 50 feet.
I think you're lying. Oh, point of order, sorry. We gotta shutter that.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure before we put this in public record that we were going to truly understand what we had here. But I do hear that people have said that they do feel like that roads of less than 50 feet from people in the neighborhood are, as they said, disastrous effect and affect public safety. So that's kind of all I have going into this.
So,
yes, sir.
I do have a question. I think Mrs. DeRitter mentioned it, and maybe one or two other people. So, if you're down a private road, private road or private drive, and you're the last property owner, and now the rules have changed, and only the 20-foot right-of-way is there, the hard pack, and there's no easements on either side per the county rules. Can a property owner upstream of you, if you don't have utilities or stuff run to your property, can they restrict?
So
do you have to go to them to get a right-of-way?
So here's a couple of things. The potential answer is yes. But
I don't like that.
Here's several things that are about this. Is one, anybody who, as somebody mentioned, if you go to buy on a road like that, that's why you use a realtor, is that you the first thing they do is check the right-of-way. Second thing, the county ordinance has nothing to do with giving that easement. A deed gives that easement. A deed, when you get a deed to your property, the deed to your property references a survey, which would have a 50-foot easement or 40-foot right-of-way or 30-foot right-of-way or whatever. The deed would say you have a prescriptive easement for ingress and egress. And a deed would say, again, reference a survey or a document that describes the amount of right-of-way that access is there for utilities or otherwise.
So
it
does the
doesn't have
county-
anything to do with the ordinance, it has everything to do with the deed document. Let me say one other thing. Somebody had mentioned that maybe people will restrict their width as a mechanism to prevent development on their 20 acres. That's clearly a lack of understanding of real estate law. I'm not a real estate lawyer, but again, it's the deed that addresses that. Once something's on a deed, it can't be changed except by the person who wrote the deed. If somebody narrows their property, just like we've already shown, they could go to the BZA or they could go through a process to widen that property back out. So you don't protect a property via a survey, you protect a property via a deed. And you can write anything down there. No blue doors on front doors, if that's what you want on your deed.
But the construction of the deed, would that not take into consideration ordinances?
No, the deed takes into consideration, the deed never references ordinances. The deed references surveys or covenants and restrictions, things like that. It would not reference a county ordinance because clearly we can change county ordinances.
So in what scenario, you did say yes, it could affect
So
ability to get
So
utilities.
if you were a developer,
So
which
what's
I'm
that
not.
scenario?
If you were a developer, which I'm not, the first thing you would do is want to make sure that you had a product to sell. If you're selling 10 lots, 15 lots, 20 lots, and you don't have a right-of-way to get to your property, you can't sell it. If you don't have utilities to that property or a way to get utilities to that property, you don't have anything to sell. So no developer is going to be dumb enough to do that. And what this ordinance is saying is that if we reduce these right-of-way requirements on private property, it's not saying you shouldn't put an easement in. I have a 50-foot easement on my personal property because I knew what the ordinance rules were. But again, not everybody knows that, so.
So I'll give you a scenario, and this is not in this state. So a guy buys a property on a mountain road, 40-something acres. And for several properties on either side of him, this is a private road, I would assume. I think it is a private road. It's not taken by the county or the state. So the guy buys this property a long time ago, and he has property. He can't get utilities there because the property owners on either side either have conservation easements or they won't give the right-of-way. And so that guy's just out of luck.
That guy's out of luck. I mean, he bought a property, whether it be landlocked property or a property that just has an ingress egress.
Right.
I say he's out of luck. I'm not going to mention the name of who it is, but there is a property owner going up towards Mountain Rest that I'm aware of, that he was trying to adjust utilities to the property and was not able to get them down his road. He had to get them off of the main road and bring them up through the back side of his property. Again, putting warning labels on everything is not the way the world functions. You have the right to work within the parameters that you want to do, whatever that is. But you wouldn't necessarily have to depend on the ordinance to go, oh, shoot, I should do this. Especially if you're a developer, you're not going to not do it because, you couldn't sell the property. So we're not really addressing developers, we're addressing private property owners.
But doesn't the ordinance, while it is a property taking, I agree with that. Does it not provide a safety net for the ability to get utilities?
I know of a piece of property right now that has a 50-foot right-of-way, but because the utilities does not run along the right-of-way, it cannot have power brought to it without the adjacent owner granting them that permission to go from the power line easement across their property, across the right-of-way to the other property, the way it's laid out. So, that's the problem we're dealing with here is we got a lot of people in the crowd that are in subdivisions. And yes, I think subdivisions should be held to a different standard. And Mr. Root had brought up the mention of a mechanism to do that, whereas family farmland is a less restrictive standard. We're trying to cram everything into one conforming egg, and it creates a lot of overreach into the rural areas. Do you need a 20-foot right-of-way if you're bringing power in or a 50-foot right-of-way if you're bringing power in from the backside of the property? The answer is no. And what we're talking about is the bare minimums. Now, will these right-of-ways or easements always be within 20 foot? No. As you go up in the mountains, you're gonna have to cut and slope, and they'll be wider. The drainage to call out will be wider, but what we're saying is this is the bare minimum. And where the bare minimum comes from, and we heard a few things about safety, and safety is a word now and that a lot of people use as a controlling factor. But in the International Fire Code, as I asked at the last meeting, nowhere in there does it deal with private roads. Nowhere. But it requires 20 foot of hard pack. If we even had 100 foot of right of way, it doesn't matter if the landowners is not going to keep the debris out of the travel way. So it doesn't matter how much right of way you have. Now, with subdivisions, yes, they have to be planning for them. But this does not fix the issue that we have in a lot of the rural areas in Oconee County, to where the power comes in across the ridge, the backside of the property. We do not have city water available to us. So why should we have to give up all that additional property and not be able to have a fence along our road and run our cattle closer to the road so we don't have to weed eat so much, just because people in the subdivision need that additional restriction? I think it needs to be broken out, and this is the first part of it. Before I go down too far, I'd like to go through and answer some of the things. So I just answered about the International Fire Code and their requirement for public roads, which is 20 foot of hard pack, and 26 foot if there's a hydrant there for you to pull off to the hydrant, just for the hydrant. They got a 96 foot radius for cul-de-sacs, and the road has to be wider if it's dead end. So, Ms. Morgan, I want to apologize if you feel like you was on trial. And I want you to never be silenced. Even if we do not agree with you, or some of us don't agree with you, you always give us a better way or additional ways to look at things. So please all of y'all, please keep coming up here. It's very important to hear the other ideas and understand where the frustration's coming from. And then hopefully we can give a little input back to you of our frustration. Public safety, what I'm hoping to propose will take care of public safety because it's in compliance with the International Fire Code for roads. So I mentioned about city water. That was one of the things somebody had stated. What if they can't get potable water out of their well? Well, not everybody in this rural area has the ability to city water. And there for a long time, we didn't have the ability to get internet. So, thank goodness they ran them on the power line, power poles. But to get down to the business of things, and Mr. Root, maybe you can clarify this for me. Over in what was that, 26? Somebody help me out here.
26.6 is acceptance into the county road system.
Right. Item 4. In your legalese, put it in common terms so that we can understand. What does that mean?
So what it states is prior to, did you put it up? Yeah, so prior to acceptance by the county for maintenance and incorporation within the county road system, all roads shall meet all road construction standards set forth in this article. So I think the genesis probably helps some. There are a number of subdivisions that were built out prior to road standards in particular, and then a developer leaves or something happens within the HOA and they want the county to take over the roads. When they come to, Kyle, he's our roads and bridges director, say, hey, please take over our roads, the first thing Kyle has to determine is if they meet the current county standards. If they don't meet the current county standards, then they cannot come into the public road system. You can't get a variance after the fact. If someone's getting ready to build a road, as we've discussed before, within Title 26, it states, or Chapter 26, it states you can get a variance perhaps or apply for one, but otherwise, like hopefully this is not legalese, you're gonna be barred from having a private road go into the public road system unless it meets the public road standards.
So what I'm aiming for is in subdivisions, for us to have, can you go to this picture, James? And I don't know who took this picture or gave it to us. Okay, so in the subdivision, what my idea is, if you notice, they got a stormwater drain there. You got a roadway, and you got your vegetation right off of the sidewalk there. Well, with a 50-foot right-of-way, that vegetation is in the right-of-way. So what I'm proposing is we don't mix the right-of-way of the road with the easement of the stormwater system, with utility easements. So when a person decides to subdivide their property, or a realtor, or not a realtor, but a developer, sorry, hopefully all of that will be called out, but it gives them the ability to do this. Now, the problem that I see is you drive around the county, you see areas like this, and then you see other areas that are not like this. And then you see also many county roads that were once state roads that are around 16, 18 foot wide, where it's like you're driving in a tunnel. Now, where am I going with that? Where I'm going with that is, it's amazing that we can go down those state roads and service all them people in those rural communities, and it's not been an issue. I asked the fire marshal. So I'm wanting to take and recognize the difference between the rural areas and the subdivisions. So part of that is some housekeeping. So I'd like a motion to clean up the verbiage, the word dwelling, to remove it out of section 26 under private drives and private roads to match up with section 32, because it only states lots.
I'll second that.
So you want to remove dwellings off of the chapter 26, where it's got lots or dwellings?
Only under private drives.
Okay. Are you doing these as separate motions?
Yes, that way it doesn't get all jumbled up.
We have a first and we have a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So it seems to me all these conflicts make more of a case to have our comp plan reviewed. We have somebody from ACOG coming to look at our, when is that? First May meeting? We've known that redundancies and conflicts exist in our ordinances, yet we have delayed recognizing it. You're bringing it up now, you want it fixed. If we piecemeal the redundancies and fix the conflicts, and then we have the big overhaul of the comp plan in May, it doesn't make sense to me. Why don't we just wait until we get some help to look at everything rather than just pick and choose what?
James, how many comp plans have we been through since 2008? Since 2008, we've been through just the one that was in 2 years ago?
So the 2020 was adopted, yeah.
and then we had a 5-year review.
This is our 5-year review of that.
We had a 2015 review,
I don't know. I'd have to go back and find it. You
and then a
probably should have, but I don't know if
2010
you did.
comp
Put it
plan.
in the plan.
A 2010 comp plan, a 2020 comp plan, and then reviews twice as well. I would suggest that they didn't catch it at those times. We're pointing it out. Let's deal with it before we forget about it.
Are we in
Would
a
be
hurry?
my opinion. We're not
Is this a
voting yet.
time-sensitive issue? Are we in a hurry to do this? Why don't we just wait and do it? This planning commission took 2.5 years to do a junkyard. And here we are, I feel like this is not, we're just ramming it through here. Why? What is the hurry?
Is there a reason not to when we identify? And we've sit there for the last, so let me explain. So we have talked about for the last 18 months, 16 months, that one of the objectives that we have had is to try to fix and correct our ordinances. We're doing that. We're not leaving it dependent on the comp plan. We didn't do that last year. We didn't leave it dependent on some future comp plan. We said we're going to go through here, work through this program, and start fixing things as we see them. That would be my opinion, is that we're seeing things to fix. We've talked about it. I talked about it at the first of the meeting, that there were several things in the ordinances to try to slow development down that we were doing to try to fix those things. There were several things that we were identifying that were wrong. And then Mr. Haney mentioned last year that he'd like it to be brought up this year. And so we're bringing it up this year for this issue.
So to answer is, why put off something we know is blatantly in conflict to someone else when we can take care of it today?
Any more discussion? We have a first and we have a second on removing the word dwelling from the private standard.
Yeah, I think that's the easy part, for sure.
All those in favor of moving dwellings from the private road standards signify by saying aye.
It's unanimous.
All those, it was unanimous? You said that was one part.
That's one part. So the next part,
Is this a different motion, a
This is a
different
different
amendment to the?
That was for both roads and drives, or you were going separate between those?
I'm fixing to make the
Okay,
motion
thank you.
and clarify. So this is dealing with private drives. It's 26-2-B. 4. So after the 13.5 foot, let's get it pulled up, highlighted.
Can y'all see that? I can blow this up and make it bigger. That would be helpful.
Yes, that's a lot better. So after the 13.5 foot, I want to put "and accommodates proper drainage to shed water from the driving surfaces," or something like that. I'm sure Mr. Root can put his spin on that. And the reason that comes about is the testimony from Road and Bridges Director talking about the 50-foot right-of-way he had that still had standing water in it. So that right there proves that no matter how much right-of-way you have, it's not going to keep the vegetation back, it's not going to keep the water back. So this is actually an improvement in this ordinance by putting that in there as a requirement to keep the standing water off the roads, which it should be. There's also the stormwater management side of it that's over on 11. So that's my motion.
And can you state it one more time?
Okay, so right past 13.5 feet, and accommodate proper drainage to shed water from driving surface.
I'll second that.
I'd like to hear what Kyle Reese thinks about that. Is that a good way to word it or not?
Do we want to have Mr. Reed and Mr. Root get together on that structuring of that to then make that call?
I would be curious if that's not already in the base road construction requirements. I mean, he stated that there was an instance, and I'm sure it's not a sole instance, but that, proper drainage didn't occur, but was it because there was not proper road construction at that time, or the conditions changed that caused that to happen? I mean, I'm asking if this change is necessary to make sure that we're meeting the requirements?
I think what you end up with, and this is why I was talking about, it doesn't matter the amount of right-of-way. Galloway's a good example. There's a ditch up
I
on
agree with
Galloway that if it's not cleared out, way past the property line, where there's not even
I see what you're saying.
a right-of-way yet or easement, then it backs up into the road. So these are good examples of why I feel that we should take it a step further, because we're wanting to provide a safe driving surface and say, you got to construct this road. It's up to you. We want to give you all the freedom in the world on these private roads for you to keep them private. But you got to make sure that it doesn't have this standing water on the driving surfaces. So in other words, the road's got to drain. So it will not, especially on a gravel road, so it will not erode away the driving surface. And I'm sure Kyle will be able to
Can I make a motion to hear from Mr. Reed on this?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Mr. Reed, Mr. Kyle, I hate to put you on the spot, but you had brought up the thing about your private property issue, and so it brought it to the attention. How does it affect us?
And to answer the question, it is always a good idea to run water away from the road. And that should be pretty easy language for us to come up with. What I was talking about was more issues when you get out of the right of way, and even like what Mickey's talking about, if you had 100 feet, sometimes you still have issues. So when you do what you're doing, you're trying to, I don't want to say catch the majority, but you're just trying to put a right of way on there that is going to get you the clear zone that you need, that's going to get you area for utilities and that kind of thing. So that's typically what we work through whenever we're discussing what we're discussing, or going through how a road is designed or how things are run.
That answers the question?
Do you have to say ditch or just water, whatever?
Conveyance, yeah, stormwater conveyance. It could be any number of things, but yeah, it would be pretty easy to, and tie it to another part in the ordinance, make sure it's all consistent, that kind of thing, so we're not stepping on either toes.
So does that give the county the authority to go beyond the right-of-way to make sure that happens or not?
No.
Or is it,
So-
what does it give the county authority to do? Or
The
what
county
does
has
it
no
give?
authority on these roads. These are private roads.
Yeah, to
So
be
what is
clear,
it, is it just giving, is it imposing requirements on the owner of the property?
The owner of that property during that section. So if you've got a culvert that was put in during, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, you're good.
If you got a culvert put in and you own that road frontage right there where that culvert's at, and for some reason you decide to keep throwing your grass clippings over into it, or your leaves, or whatever, well, when it starts backing water up onto the road, it's your responsibility. Am I? Yeah, it's your responsibility, and a failure
So
to do so.
who enforces that?
Well, the county will have to come after them, hopefully with a
The
letter
county has
first.
some authority, right?
Huh?
So the county gets the authority
Yes.
over the landowner.
Not me, though.
If it's private, there's probably
It
an
would be-
HOA or something.
Not necessarily in rural areas, you wouldn't have a HOA.
Somebody has to enforce the rules, or there are, it doesn't matter whether you write them down or not.
If Mr. Root will tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but if it's private road, private standards, private HOA or covenants or otherwise, that it would, or not in an HOA, that it would be the private residents bringing suit using the defense of the ordinance.
Yes, I think you're right.
That would be one means, yes. The county could enforce it either by a uniform ordinance summons, because it's a violation of a county code. So that's actually puts it into magistrate's court on the criminal side. No one goes to jail for it, but you can get fined for it. And then also the county can issue, you could council say, hey, these folks are just clogging up this roadway, your water's deteriorating the road, it's against the county ordinance, file for an injunction. So they can cause me to bring a civil suit. So
So there are
two other ways
multiple things
apart
that-
from a private entity, HOA, private persons, they can certainly bring it. So you're probably gonna be quicker to do it, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. So there's a motion on the floor and a second to add the language that was discussed after the 13.5 feet. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of that addition signify by saying aye. All those opposed? All right.
You know, I should have, well, I guess I'll go ahead and make it, because we broke that sentence, we must add to it, below it, so it makes sense. And it said it must have appropriate documentation for professional engineering license by South Carolina. If it wouldn't sound right, just starting out. Well, I guess it would.
Say that again.
No, I was talking out loud and thinking in my head at the same time, so never mind. Mr. Root.
Sir.
Item 2. Will you elaborate on the R portion of that sentence?
The R on B2?
I believe is that what's highlighted? Is that what you're talking about?
Or an
Yes.
appropriately executed private roadway easement.
Oh, yeah, I did not find I looked for a definition of that and I have not found one. And I don't know what it could be apart from something that accommodates the same thing with 50-foot right-of-way would be.
So I actually looked into several areas, and to me, it comes across as easements. Can you look into that?
If I could, just to, it may help for the terminology here too. A right-of-way is a type of easement. So they're not dissimilar, so that it's all at easement premises, and you may have within an easement, that sign or that television screen is easement. So it's rights reserved from the person who owns that television. They're giving rights to somebody else, the easement rights. So not everything they own, but just something. Maybe half of the screen they can go back and forth, so it's an access easement, and the other part is maybe a right-of-way, you might call that the right-of-way portion, and the other part could be a utility easement, but it's all an easement, just a portion of its right-of-way, meaning for access, ingress, egress. Does that help?
So you don't know why there's a difference between the private roads statement, which is just
I do
have a
not.
minimum road right of way, and then this one has the or.
I
That's
don't know.
what Mickey's asking.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Nixon, I do not know where that came from, and when I looked over it, I've not seen it applied or anyone attempt to work with a, appropriately executed private roadway easement. I'm assuming it's still gonna be 50-foot as applied, and they're just not, so one way it could be deemed, and this would be a common sense approach, is you talked about places where subdivision's built out, oftentimes it's platted, and the roadways are platted, so the property, the lot you own doesn't go into the roadway. Oftentimes, though, the roadway is platted, but still your property goes into the center line. So in those properties, you want an easement to say, all right, your property goes to the center line, but you've granted an easement for everyone to have access through that. So I'm assuming that's similar, and they're just juxtaposing or kind of conflating the language.
Yeah, I was thinking it's more like you've got property behind a larger property, and there's an easement going through it, where it's just a ingress and egress. But I don't know, I was just curious about that. But anyway, for my motion is, with this one, 26.2B2, is to have a minimum, now this is the bare minimum, road right-of-way of 20 foot. That covers the IFC standards. And it doesn't mean that that's the maximum. It gives it up to that rural property owner to decide what else does he need outside of that minimum. But the smallest that road can be is the 20 foot.
Mr.
That's your
Chairman, if I
motion?
could,
That's my motion.
just for a point of clarification, and would that be deleting the remainder of that sentence, appropriately executed?
No, I think we need to figure out what that sentence is.
Delete it. All right, I'll do that part.
So we're replacing 20 feet instead of 50 feet is
Correct.
what we're doing
To
under
remove the
B2.
50 foot to 20 foot.
I'll second that motion. I mean, my thought behind that is that we're already talking about a 20-foot road construction, and 20 feet of road construction is for road safety. That's what the fire department says that they need for road safety, is that 20 foot of pavement. The right-of-way beyond that, should it be there? More than likely, especially if you need utilities or something. But to require it in that private section, I'd say 20 feet. Any further discussion on that item B2?
Now, are we talking rural as private property or?
This is only on private property under private drives, which deal with 4 to 10 homes on it.
We haven't got to private roads yet.
We hadn't gotten to the roads portion. This is just talking about the private drives portion.
So this would protect somebody like Perry.
Yes, and it'd also make Perry realize, give him the ability, if his power's coming in from the backside of the property, to only have to use up 20 approximate foot plus drainage, if need be. Because some roads you're not gonna need, if it's a crowned style road and it's pretty flat, you're not gonna need that drainage there. It's just when you got dips and things like that, you need that additional drainage. So, that would protect that type of property owner.
All right. So we have a first, we have a second. Does anybody have anything else to say on that B2, reducing that from 50 feet to 20 feet? All those in favor of that signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
All right, so moving on to my next motion, and I did do a little bit of research for this. So I pulled up the geometric design criteria for local rural roads. This deals with public roads though. Once again, I cannot find anything for private roads in any of this. You know, I heard people talk about the rules we have out there, and they're there for a reason. Well, I just keep going back to the Chevron difference being overturned, thank goodness. You know, it was regulations, it was overreached there, but anyway. So anyway, a Group 1 road is a minimum 9 foot per lane. 4 foot total. If it's a paved road, it's got a 2 foot shoulder. So that puts you at a 26 foot road width. That covers the hard pack. And this is the problem we get into. And this is why I hope that we start having meetings twice a month, because there's really got to be a difference between gravel roads and paved roads. They shouldn't be all lumped into one song. People think they can run 45 on a gravel road. But we need to go through and actually call out these roads and do our due diligence to make sure that we're providing the safety needed, but also providing the convenience and property rights to the property owners. And by us trying to put paved roads and gravel roads in the same category, you're going to come up with a stricter, a more restrictive road design. So anyway, that's where I'm going with that. It's, if anybody wants to look this up, it's figure 14.3-A on the SCDOT website.
Would you go over that math one more time? Because I heard 9 plus 2 times 2, so that would be
Okay.
18 plus 4.
So if you, both lanes, that'll be 18. 4 foot to each side.
Okay, 22. Oh, wait, 2 foot on, I got you. That's where I'm at. So it would be 18 plus 4.
Huh?
18 plus 4.
Plus one more.
Plus 1 more. Gotcha, 26.
So with that being said, now these are minimal road widths. Like I said, this is private property. This is not public property, this is private property. And this is minimal road widths. With that, I want to revise 26-2C2 to have a minimum road right-of-way width of 26 feet.
That's your motion?
That is my motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Now, what type of road again is this?
This is a private road.
Private road for a subdivision?
For anything that serves more than 11.
Anything more than 11.
Anything more than that?
All right, I got some questions.
Okay.
So is that paved or not paved?
Well, that's what we've got to dive into.
All right, so I want to make a motion that we delay this meeting until we got more information on how we want to revise this, because I don't have a good picture for this part.
Sounds like a good plan.
I think we need to have the information from the SCDOT. We need to have a markup of what we propose changing. That way, we can discuss it articulately.
Okay.
And that way, the public has a picture of what we're trying to do.
Say your motion again, Dave.
Motion to delay continued discussion of this ordinance to the next meeting, which we need to talk about whether we need to double up the meetings to do that.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that, when James reaches out to Joel Smith at DOT and have him here? It'd be nice to hear somebody, they're absent, and Chris Smith is missing too, it'd be nice.
So they had a reason they left that,
Yeah.
that they both had to go.
The DOT relationship to private roads, is it any more than just the access point?
Typically, it would just be the access point to the encroachment permit if they're connecting to a state road.
You were asking for an amendment. What's the process to, she asked for an amendment that DOT be involved.
It's just amending the motion.
Are you accepting that amendment of the motion?
Second.
Discussion on that. We can have DOT here. I don't want to confuse the public that they really don't have any application to this other than the access to the main road.
Was it because they were talking about using the SCDOT design manual?
That and the private road standard comes from your complaint was somebody cut and pasted the public road standard and put it onto a private road. Why? So why can't, I think DOT should be here and maybe explain how we came up with that minimum right away of 50 feet. I think they could shed some light on it.
I think Mr. Markovich explained the why of how that ended up in the ordinance at the last meeting.
I doubt there's anybody from SCDOT that knows the ordinance history for just specifically Oconee County.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
there now.
It's my understanding that private road is private, not necessarily because it's private property, but because of how the road is accessed. It's really supposed to be accessible to the people who live down that road, not to the public per se. That's what I understood. So, I mean, that might be helpful to have somebody from DOT clear that up.
Mr. Root, can you clear up that definition?
Well, one thing I think, first, it does, unless it's amended further tonight, the private road standards currently reference 26-3E and F, the design and construction standards for public roads, so those do mirror. I understand there's some contention about how that was adopted, but, so that makes it relevant having them here unless you change that. The ownership of the road, I think Ms. Spicer is right. Generally, it is a matter of who has access or not. But the ownership really goes to underneath the surface of the road. So you have public roads where private entities own the land underneath the roads. You have public roads where public entities own the land underneath the roads. And you have private roads where public entities own the land underneath the roads. So it's not dispositive. Does that make sense?
So you just hit on a very good topic. When you say you have public roads, and also, in this case, you might have a easement that's owned by the group of individuals there in that housing development, whatever you want to call it. But they don't own what's underneath that road. So we've been talking about using these right-of-ways for utilities. So how do you run utilities beneath that right-of-way if it's not owned by the person that owns the road?
So that goes back to my description of the easement premises. So everything's an easement if it's granted, certainly is clear by a written instrument. But within that written instrument, it's going to say, here's the road, the traveling surface, you call it the hard pack. You have an easement for ingress and egress on that. Outside, left and right margins of it are on one side, you have an easement for a utility. So it's often carried in the same instrument, or it may just say, here's 50-foot easement, you can use it for ingress, egress utilities, and whatever else. I mean, any myriad of interests that you own, you can convey.
So in our ordinance, how does it read right now?
Which part?
Do we have that subsoil easement?
For utilities?
Yes.
No. It's a road right-of-way.
That's what
I think it's just in common practice that you have, very, very common practice, and Kyle's better one to speak to this. Kyle, you come up here because this is your chapter. Kyle,
Motion,
if I
I
can
make a motion to put Kyle up.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of Kyle coming up? Aye.
Sorry. It's in chapter 32, the definition of right-of-way is in chapter 32, and it does call out that it is required to have easement for utilities, for drives and roads. Under the definitions for chapter 32.
So does that go back to my question about,
Kind of, sort of. Unless you're getting it from somewhere else, you need to put it in there. Which again, the argument's always been that a developer will clearly put it in there because they have nothing to sell if they couldn't. If they didn't have electricity to a lot, they wouldn't sell the lot or be able to. So a developer, regardless of our minimum standards, they're gonna put in standards and electricity and utilities and things like that so that they can sell those lots.
So when if I could just go back to it, it says road right-of-way width means an easement, and includes utility installation. So utility maintenance, road construction, road maintenance, all occur consistent with the standards, so we gotta revisit that at some point, within the road right-of-way easement.
So this just opens up a whole new can of worms for us that live out in rural areas. Like the telephone company, they run their phone line down the middle of the gravel road. I'm sure you've scraped up many.
Not personally, but yeah, we have. Yeah.
So where does it keep us from, in these rural areas, and that's why I'm saying paved roads need to be different from gravel road, from running that utility down that center of that road?
It doesn't, private, it does.
Private road, it does.
County, it does.
Yeah, so the
private, it
20 foot, we still can get utilities down the center of the road.
If they are okay with running them there, yes, sir. If you have the right to do so, yes, sir.
That's like Kiwi Key did, isn't it? Their water lines were run under the roads.
Oh, I hope not.
They were.
Sewer,
Well,
yeah.
their water lines were run under the roads. That's why half of their roads were messed
I don't know
up
about water. We've got several that's got water under them,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but yeah.
But yes,
It's not standard though, is it?
No, it is forbid now for the county, yeah. It's not, I mean,
it's not good financial practice.
not something we're,
Well, it depends on what kind of road you're on. If you're on a gravel road and you've got a limited
Still
amount of space.
cheaper not to run it under the road
Huh?
because of the pack.
but that goes
cheaper
back
not
to
to
the
run
owner's right. Where are they getting it from? Do they even need it near the road? Under
Anyway.
those small stuff.
We've got a amendment on the floor.
The amendment, so you had a motion. You had an amendment to that motion, but it was not seconded. Do I hear it?
Mr. Next second.
Okay.
I did second it.
State the amendment again, Mr. James Coley.
It's a, have DOT attend the next meeting.
Okay. Motion to have DOT attend to the next meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
It's unanimous.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're just
I
back.
think the motion before that was let's delay this until we get some more information on
On
the
this.
table and in our packets.
Regarding the roads, private roads, discussion, and
Instead of making an amendment to do each little piece, I think we ought to bring to the table a markup of what we want to change, Mickey. And then we can
Well, that was
discuss
the-
that instead of it being a surprise. I don't like us bringing surprises to the table.
well, that's kind of what he was
Done that
going for.
before, and I
think
didn't like
we're
it.
going item by item is kind of discussing a markup, but it is getting late into the night.
It is.
I'd like to continue that part of the conversation. I don't think it's a bad idea. Where we could continue going through, making motions on items that need to be potentially changed or marked up. And we bring that part to the next meeting.
So submit it to James and he'll push it out.
So, motion was
Motion was to
to,
delay continuance of this discussion to the next meeting, starting now, and for Mickey to have a packet, an information packet with the supporting, with the justification from the state, documents, and the markup of what he wants changed, what he's proposing to change in the other, rest of the ordinances.
and we've had a second to that. If there's no more discussion, all of those in favor, say aye.
It's unanimous.
So I've got one more motion before we adjourn. So, Mr. Root, I'm gonna put you to task. So when Markovich brought this to my attention at the last meeting, 32-4. Let's see, C. No, I'm sorry. B, L,
32, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the dash what?
4.
Just 32-4?
Yeah, 32-4, if I'm reading this correctly. There's a whole bunch going right through the center of mine, so I'm thinking that's what it is.
B4, you said?
4F.
What is the section? Sorry.
Give me a page number. 32 dash what?
32-4.
Not
Section
214, 32 dash 4.
Dash 4.
Dash 4.
Dash 4. 32-4. I got it right here.
Actually,
32-4, you mind if I?
there is no dash 4.
Yeah, it's just it's in Article 1,
Okay, he's got it.
the County Planning Commission.
Okay. That's why.
Okay, there.
Yep.
32 dash 4, you don't have
I
that
see
one.
it, yeah.
Do what?
Go ahead.
Okay, so that deals with the appeals pertaining to the planning commission.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the right thing then.
32-4.
32-4.
F.
F. There we go.
Just organization, meeting rules.
No, that reads different than mine.
No. You may be 2F?
So it's Article 1. We're in Article 1, right?
Yeah.
32-4.
County Planning Commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Item F. Right here.
2F?
2F?
2F.
2F, here we go, policies and procedures.
So it doesn't clearly define what the difference is between that and,
I got a point of order. This is not part of the agenda.
Thank you.
We don't have an old business, new business, but it may be something that you want to bring up as an agenda item for the next meeting.
I think this is very important in us going forward because we need this defined in order for us to function as a group.
Okay,
So it's,
so you're asking to be able to complete your thought, or
I'm asking to be able to complete my thought.
is everyone okay with that comment? Okay.
So you're not looking for action, you're just looking for clarification on something.
Clarification.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Shoot.
So it's not a amendment or anything, it's a clarification. So if you go over to, now I'm gonna put my glasses back on. I hate the way you pull something like that. Over to, the appeals.
Are we still in F?
No, go further down to the BZA. So they've
That
got
hasn't
appeal.
lost me. I don't know what we're talking about on F2.
We're talking about the appeal process
Okay.
between the planning commission and the BZA.
So if I may ask, are you trying to relate this to individual?
Oh, you can probably sit down if you want to.
If,
Property owner
I'm just
making
waiting to be
an appeal.
dismissed.
Kyle, please, please feel free to sit down. Sorry to keep you up there.
I'd rather.
Where's the appeal process at? I must have moved my sticker.
F1, Board of Appeals.
Kyle, we need you one more time,
Are you speaking
just as
of
entertainment.
appeals
Yeah.
from, or
Yes.
variances for road standards? For road issues?
So this is,
32.6.
is it 32-6? Okay. So if you go to, F Powers,
Yep, 32.6.
yep, 35, 32.
Did you say F?
No, it's not 32-6, it's 32-5. I'm sorry.
Appeals from the decision of the board. 32.5 is.
So it reads similar to the planning commission. Can you reach out and get some clarification on that to help us understand
The difference between the two?
the difference between the two?
It's really, yes, I'd be glad to give you a more fulsome opinion. I will tell you, as to the roads, it's posited within chapter 26. It specifically states if you're looking for a variance for road requirements, you go to the BZA in chapter 26. So that's, I guess, most germane to what you're talking about here, but I'd be glad to give a more fulsome opinion as to the breakdown from planning commission and board of zoning appeals for variances and special exceptions and appeals.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Let's hear those beautiful words, Dave.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?